My name is Marcin Erdmann. I would like to get you interested a bit into in Ratpack, which in essence is a non-blocking framework for JVM. But it's not only that. And I would like to talk about things that are not related to the fact that it's a non-blocking framework, about other things that will make your life as a developer easy or joyful. Yeah, okay. Where's my mouse? I cannot see it. Anyway, so I've been involved with Groovy since 2010. At the top, you've got my Twitter handle. If you're interested in following me, I don't tweet that much, but yeah, everybody wants to have more followers than Dan would, so you can as well follow me. I really like contributing to the open source, and I would suggest that everyone who feels like it should try it, because it will make you a better developer and you can learn a lot of stuff from that. And the Groovy community is really welcoming, and people are really helpful, so don't be afraid and try it for yourself. I'm also a Ratpack commenter at the moment, and I'm the lead of the project called JEP, which is used for web testing. Who's using JEP around here? Okay, awesome. I have some stickers, JEP stickers. I'm going to put them on the table after my talk. So there isn't that many. So the first come, first served basis probably. Yeah, and at the moment I'm based in London, and I'm working as part of the Energized Work company, and we're writing Groovy and Ratpack applications. So if you're ever thinking about migrating to London and we want to work on stuff like that, just give us a shout. As I said, I won't be talking about anything that is non-blocking related. With Ratpack, there are other talks online and two really good blog posts from Luke Daly, the creator of Ratpack, about the execution model of Ratpack. It's really worth a read before you use Ratpack big time when you're thinking about taking it to maybe production. But I will talk. I'm going to get some water as well. In the meantime, I will talk about development time reloading. That's not rocket science. If you've been using Rails in the past, you know that you are expecting it of your web framework to give it to you. But I will explain a bit how it works under the hood in Ratpack. I'm gonna tell you about how easy it is to deploy to Heroku, a Ratpack application, and where to look for resources that will guide you through the process. I'm gonna tell you why I believe Ratpack is an awesome framework when it comes to testing. It makes testing of applications written in Ratpack, especially integration style testing, extremely easy. I'm gonna say a few words about configuration mechanism in Ratpack and how it can be extended. Then there will be a few words about how to take part in the application lifecycle. So basically, when the server starts up and shuts down, how to register, how to use hooks that are provided for that. Renderers and parsers, explain what that is, and a few words about session support, HTTP session support in Ratpack. I'd really like to find my... Oh, there you go. There we go. No, it's just my speaker's view. Is the slide is really small and I cannot see it on my screen, so I would need to do it from memory. But yeah, the development time reloading. It's based on Gradle continuous mode. That's a new feature of Gradle that was introduced in, I believe, Gradle 2.4. If you haven't seen it in action, I suggest you try it out. It's useful not only for working with web frameworks, but making sure that your build is being re-executed every single time something changes in your inputs of your build. So basically, you just add a -t at the end of the run command for Ratpack to enable it. When a change is detected by Gradle, it kicks off a rebuild, stops the server, and starts the server up. And to make it a bit faster, there's a bit of play going on with class loading. Only the user classes, what is considered by Ratpack to be user classes, are being reloaded, and the class loader that holds classes of the framework and dependencies, which should not change between build invocations, are not being reloaded, just to make it faster. I'm going to show you a few demos. I won't back up every single topic with a demo because we only have 30 minutes. But the first one, will be about reloading. Crazy. The resolution is crazy. I don't know why. Let me try changing that. I thought I changed it, but I decided to go. Gonna come back, give it a while. Okay, cool. So we have a really simple Ratpack application over here. Basically, a hello world, nothing fancy. Just to show you that, just a regular hello world, nothing crazy. And if we go to this URL, it reloads. And what I want to show you is this build is somehow convoluted. I've got some markdown files that I'm processing, turning them into handlebars templates, and then rendering that. And what I want to show you is that anywhere anything changes in your build, which is an input to any task. So the reloading mechanism is not specific to your main sources or to your resources or anything like that. If you extend your build, or if you have multiple sub-projects in your Gradle build, if Gradle detects any changes in any of the inputs of the tasks that are being run as part of the build, it will redo the build, and your application will get refreshed. So basically, if I'm going to go to my Markdown custom file, and I'm going to go from an H1 to an H3 element here, we see that this is now rebuilding. The build has been kicked off, and now this, when I refresh the page, it should just basically become a smaller text, which it did. So yeah, nothing fancy there, but it works, and it's, as I said, not a generic. Not a specific mechanism, but a generic one. So I don't have time to show you how to deploy to Heroku, but I did a lightning talk in the past where I managed to deploy from zero code whatsoever to Heroku Hello World application in Ratpack in around 7 minutes. All that I needed was JDK, Gradle on the machine, and the Heroku tool build that will allow me to create the application in Heroku and stuff like that. If you're interested in how to do it, the Gradle example on Heroku, Heroku provides you with examples of how to deploy things to their infrastructure, and the one that is supposed to show you how to use Gradle as a build system for your applications is using Ratpack as the framework. So if you go on GitHub to Heroku/Gradle getting started, there's a Ratpack application in there, and there are steps to get that into Heroku. So that's the resource you want to have a look if you want to deploy to a Ratpack application to Heroku. Actually, one more thing on this topic is Jebish.org and Ratpack.io are both Ratpack applications deployed to Heroku on the free tier. So basically, for a hobby project or for your open source project, that's a perfect solution. It's a great solution. It can handle a lot of traffic, and it's free basically, and it's always there. So if you need something for free to deploy an application to the cloud, that's a sensible solution. Let's talk a bit about the support for testing in Ratpack. So Ratpack gives you an ability to start up the application, your application you're building, to test it in integration style or even functional style, because the whole stack is being started up, nothing is being mocked. You've got a regular application running. There are two default implementations. One is main class application under test, which you want to use when you're writing a Java application with Ratpack. If you're writing a Groovy application, there's Groovy Ratpack main application under test. These implementations are lazy, which means that they don't start up until you ask them for an address. They support starting on a random port, which is really useful if you want to parallelize your tests to make sure that if you, for example, want to run your tests in 3 or 4 Gradle JVMs in parallel and make sure that they don't clash on ports or other resources, it's already there. What else should I say about that one? Thanks to the fact that you get this ability to start up application easily, it means that you can integrate easily with any testing framework. So there's no specific classes or traits or anything like that to integrate with Spock or with JUnit or with TestNG in Ratpack, because all you do is you just new up an application under test, and then you can test it from whatever is your test framework of choice. And if you're using Spock, then remember to annotate your applications under test in your test with auto cleanup, application under test, closable application under test, implement closable. So basically, after your test, the application will be torn down, so that you don't leak resources. Another useful thing when it comes to testing is the concept of an embedded application, which means that you can use it to define an application inline in your tests using the same DSL as you would use for a regular application. There are several use cases for that. So one is if you want to, for example, mock out a simple external HTTP service, you can basically mock it up in your test or use an embedded application in a helper class or wrap it in some kind of an abstraction, but you would use this mechanism to do it. And also another thing is like when you are implementing parts of framework interfaces like renders, parsers, handlers, session stores, and you want to test them separately, but you don't want to have to mock out the whole world, and you want your tests to be integration style tests with which will give you a certain level of confidence. Then you can use an embedded application to test it, and you basically in your embedded application you would use the thing that you're testing, the thing that you implemented, and then test it over HTTP. Okay, let's go to the second demo. We'll have to just keeps on changing, which is really awesome, but anyway. So we have an embedded application. Just a quick show how easy it is. If you've ever written a Ratpack application, you will be familiar with this DSL. And what we are doing over here, we are adding a list to the registry. So registry is something like an application context in Spock. It's an application context in Spring. An equivalent of that is a registry in Ratpack. So we add a list, and then we've got a handler that when you post to it, anything you post to to the application. It gets added to that list that lives in the registry. And when you get back this list, and we have a test over here that basically posts different things to the root of the application, and then it gets it. Should work. Not run it in a while, but you can see over here that the Ratpack server has been started, and we executed this test, and it's basically inline. It's really good to play with things in your tests, and to mock stuff, and to test implementations of infrastructure code. That's where unit testing would really make very little sense. Impositions, it's a new mechanism in Ratpack 1.2.0. What they do is basically they allow you to modify the application under test, a real instance of your application running locally, by changing its configuration. So think, for example, you need a URL for some external HTTP service, and in your test you don't want to go to the real thing, you want to go to a locally mocked one. Very, very easy to do it with impositions. And something a bit more complex is using impositions to change the registry of the application, which basically allows you to inject different implementations of your services into your classes. So say you had a Twitter service interface, which would allow you to go over to Twitter and download some tweets, and you don't want to do it in your test anymore. You want to completely mock it out, so no HTTP, nothing like that. You would just use an imposition to put in a custom test implementation of that service, which would always return the same tweets, for example, or something like that. So it's really easy to do. I do it a lot on the application I'm working at the moment. The nice thing is that you don't need to do anything to your production code, so you don't need to put special hooks to be able to override your configuration, or to put in special hooks to inject different dependencies when you're testing your application. Yeah, that's really I find the impositions really useful, because there was quite a lot of it involved quite a lot of exercise in the past to be able to do things like that before the impositions were introduced. Configuration mechanism in Ratpack, quite sophisticated. You get many built-in config sources, so you can use JSON or YAML or property files. You can source your configuration based on environment, system properties, and command line arguments. The way it works is basically it takes the data source, takes the config source, it parses it into a tree of Jackson object nodes. Then it uses the object mapper, Jackson object mapper, to turn it into objects, and puts it into registry. So basically, you get a type-safe configuration that is easily injectable into your handlers and other infrastructure code in Ratpack. And as I said, the nice thing about it is that you can really easily change it in tests, change your configuration in tests using an imposition without having to put in special hooks just for the sake of being able to test it. If the extensive list of configuration sources is not enough for you, then you can always implement your own custom config source. There's a config source interface that you need to implement, a single method interface, and then you can use that when you are configuring your server config. And I find this mechanism quite useful when overriding config for tests. So in our tests, we specify config as just maps or objects that get then transformed into the real objects and get injected into the application under test. Another option I've seen that was probably just to play with it. There's a post from Mr. Hackey which you probably know, about using a database as a config source for a Ratpack application. Probably not that much useful in the real life, but definitely possible. It shows you that you can pretty much use anything, HTTP service, you name it, to turn it into a configuration source in a Ratpack application. Okay, and again, sorry about that, no idea why it's doing this. So let's have a look at a custom config quickly, a custom config source. Probably here, yeah. So what we have over here is a config source that allows you to use a map as a config source, and thanks to a really useful method from Jackson that allows you to turn anything into an object tree. We can quite easily turn a map into a tree of object nodes, and then it just becomes the config source for a Ratpack application. And then what we do over here, we have a mocked application, the ISBN DB. We're mocking the response for getting the Groovy in Action data book. You probably know the Groovy in Action book. And what we do over here is we have a helper method on our custom application under test that allows us to pass in a map. So we're saying that the config for the ISBN DB is now pointing to our local mocked version of ISBN DB. And we are using an imposition, a server config imposition. So basically, this allows us to add new data sources, new config sources to the application under test. And we are using our class to inject it. And then we have a test that's in our test over here. Instead of using the real one, we are using a mocked version, local mocked version of the ISBN DB. Okay, remote control. I don't know if you've heard of it. That's a thing that was created by Luke Daly initially as a plugin for Grails. Now it's available to other frameworks as well, and it's really useful in what I've heard people call gray box testing. So when think of it when you need to set up your application under test into a specific state, especially in your database, and if you would do it via the UI, it would be cumbersome. It would take a long time. So what you actually want to do is you want to send some code into your running application under test. It's usually a closure which gets executed inside of your application under test JVM, and it allows you to set up some state before your test. It allows you to verify the state of the application after the test. If, for example, the action you're testing does not expose anything useful on publicly available interfaces of the application. There is built-in support for this in Ratpack. And again, you're thinking about, sending some code to be executed in my application, security risk, right? Big, there should be an alarm going off. But you have to be really specific to enable it in your test, and you use an imposition, so it's really hard to get it wrong and have it in production. Let's talk quickly about renderers. Renderers allow you to turn your objects into different implementation, into different representation. So by default, when you say render a string in your Ratpack handler, what happens is the char sequence renderer is being used to render your string. There are also renderers for path, for JSON, for promises, various templates, and the renderable, about which I will talk a bit later. And if you want to have a custom render, like for example, let's say the next big thing is now we're not going to use JSON for data transfer, but we're going to use YAML. You can quite easily implement a YAML renderer, put it into the registry of your application, and use it in your application. So we've got a quick test over here. We have a YAML render. I'm going to show the implementation in a moment, and a really simple handler, which takes an entity class, which just only has a list of values, and renders it as a YAML. Over here, we see that when we go to the root of that application under test, we get the list of all of the values that we are defining over here, and this is how a YAML renderer looks like. Again, really simple. All you need to do is put it into your the registry of your application. We're using the YAML mapper that comes with Jackson again to make our life easy. I'm going to skip this one. So then we have parsers, which work on if you think about renders, parsers are kind of opposite to them. When you send data to your application in whatever format it might be, it allows you to, parsers are basically strategy classes that allow you to parse these requests. There are just two built-in parsers in Ratpack. One is for JSON and one is for HTTP forms. For example, in the application I'm working currently on, we've built a custom parser that allows us to do some data mapping that you might know from Spring. So even though Ratpack is not conceived to be a full stack application framework, you might turn it into one quite easily, and just add something like data mapping from forms that are sent over to your application into objects, which you can then validate, and so on, so on. Let's move on to HTTP sessions. Ratpack, being a modern framework, has the session and HTTP session implementation built with distributed sessions in mind, because probably nobody nowadays runs their application with just a single node, or if people do, then there's not a great amount of people doing that. So it's really easy to create your own implementation of a distributed session store. If you don't like the one that is already there, there's a Redis-backed session store that allows you to store your sessions from multiple nodes into a Redis store and then read it. So basically, you don't need session affinity. You don't need to send the same user to the same node. You can send them anywhere, and they will be able to easily retrieve the system will be able to easily retrieve their sessions from the store. There's the in-memory session store, which obviously is not distributed, so you cannot use it with multiple nodes. There is a cookie-based one, which basically encrypts the session data and sends it using cookies to the user. So the next time the user comes back, it gives you back their session in their cookies. And we're using that one on our application, and it's working pretty well. And as I said, it's really easy to build your own. Have a look at the documentation of session store interface, which has an example for a file-backed store. So there are ideas on how to progress. By default, the sessions are serialized using Java serialization. And if you want, for example, use Cryo because you think it's going to be faster, or use JSON as your serialization of your sessions, you can still do that easily. Just implement a session serializer and put it in the registry of your application. I'm going to move on to this slide. So I would like to say something about the philosophy behind the framework. So the framework doesn't abstract concepts. It integrates with services. So when you are using Jackson, when you are dealing with JSON in a Ratpack application, it's quite obvious that you are dealing with Jackson implementation of that. So it's easy to. So basically, if you don't like using Jackson, it should be fairly easy to use a different implementation. Even the registry is abstracted in Ratpack, which means that you can use it with, by default, the dependency injection mechanism used is Juice, but you can use it with Spring, or you could say use Dagger if you wanted to. There's nothing limiting you from doing that. And this is a good strategy. This framework, in my opinion, has a good strategy if you're if you want to use it for an application that you know that's going to take a long time, and you will develop it over the years, because it gives you this flexibility. If you're looking for something that is really will get you started quickly, and will have a lot of helpers, a rich ecosystem, it's definitely not. You won't get as many plugins as with Spring Boot or with Grails, for example. Shout out to Dan Woods. He's finishing off, from what I know, working on his book about Ratpack. It should go into print around May. You can already buy the early release from people at O'Reilly. And if you want to learn more about Ratpack, that's going to be the source, because the documentation, unfortunately, is not in the greatest shape at the moment, and it's not easy to learn new stuff. But when this book goes out, it's definitely going to be easier. So quick summary. I wanted to show you that there's more stuff to Ratpack than it just being a non-blocking framework. Good testing supports other clear-cut concepts which are useful when building applications. Due to time limitations, I had to kind of run through it, but hopefully I showed you the concepts. If you want to talk a bit more about them, feel free to come over and ask questions. And hopefully you'll find some time to investigate this framework, because I think there's quite good stuff in there that you can use and you can learn from. Okay, that will be it.